looking for me?
Your aunt's got every cop in Iverstown peeping through keyholes.
You won't let them find me.
You always come running to me.
Got nobody else to run to, Sam.
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for our show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. Joined by Susan Paley, who is the CEO of DropLabs, the first sonic sensory footwear that lets you feel sound through your body through a novel Bluetooth pairing with a chosen device. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So before the interview, we were talking about your past, and of course, you were the first and former CEO of Beats by Dr. Dre, and I guess you also worked with OLSRs?
I did. He came in when they started Beats Music. He was one of the original architects of Beats Music. And
it's amazing to see how he's gone on to his next venture, which is also music oriented, but more for the enterprise side as well. What an interesting ride. I'm just curious if you could just spend just a couple of minutes, maybe kind of walking us through all the various roles that you have played in the sense of how that has led you to what you're doing today. But specifically, I think the audience are going to be interested around your journey with Beats.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in consumer electronics a long time. I don't want to say how long, it will age me. But I actually, prior to Beats, I was at JBL and Harman. And just the only reason I'm giving this context is sort of an interesting story of, audio has such a long legacy. And so when I was with actually an audio technology startup that was acquired. And from there, we were acquired by Harman, and they were looking at the JBL brand. And so this is, everything's always comes down to a brand story, right? And connecting with consumers. And the JBL brand was the brand of Woodstock, and it had really sunsetted. And so how were they going to start to talk to youth again? And so to get kind of a jump start on that, I said, well, we as JBL don't have the authority to talk to youth, but we, Roxy and Quiksilver do. And we really were able to create a joint venture, almost a startup within Harman, where we were going to basically map our expertise in audio manufacturing around a line of products with speakers and headphones. And this is when desktop speakers were a huge deal. And then leverage Roxy and Quiksilver's strength in marketing, communication, messaging, packaging, and really kind of combine the best of two. They had the voice of youth, we didn't. And we were able to open up different distribution channels. From there, I met Jimmy and Dre because they were actually the very kind of initial thought around Beats was they have something really unique and special, and they wanted to license with a lot of different consumer electronics brands. So they came to JBL and Harman, and we were able to kind of talk to them about really a signature sound in the car. And so I was sort of leading those discussions, and they asked if I could, they all had day jobs, as they called it, if I could come and helm this enterprise. And so it's one of those things where, right time and you take a flyer and you don't know what you're getting into. And I think I was saying to someone, I thought I was getting on like a fast bullet train. I didn't realize I was like on a rocket ship to outer space. And it was an incredibly exciting time because, again, Jimmy wanted something really new. He wanted to reinvent a category and really put lifestyle, when Beats started, there was no really on or over ear category for consumers. It was really a prosumer. And so he really took the idea of brand and marketing and design and created a movement. And it was really born out of his obsession with, this was the time, the AirPod or the earbuds, right? Where no one could hear the highs and lows. You're losing octaves on the low end and the high end. And as every musician, everyone who spent time in the studio, it's all about, they spend so much time putting a track together and the energy and emotion behind it. And they want you to feel all of it, not just part of it, not just the middle, And so he became obsessed with this is, Kids are blowing their eardrums because they're trying to connect to the music and they're losing the connection. So how can we deliver something that, frankly, and it delivered it from a brand and marketing standpoint, but also deliver it from a product standpoint, because now you were having over ear and on ear headphones. So you weren't having something that dangled out of you. You were sealing your ear canal so you could get bass again. Because what people do is when they want to crank their music, they want more bass. They want to feel it. They want to feel the punch. And he was able to wrap something that was like an audio issue around a brand, a lifestyle, and marketing. So it became a movement. It became, and really started for him as a movement around audio. Like audio matters. Everyone like over indexes visually and thinks about visual. And audio is kind of that magic thing. When you add audio to that experience, it's like, it's kind of the aha moment, right? From black and white to Technicolor. Things that are flat become dimensionalized.
Well, I think that's a really beautiful kind of contextual backdrop of what we're doing today. Can you talk a little bit about DropLabs and how you guys are really extending this work that you began many years ago?
Yeah, I mean, when you're at someone's like Beats and you're around Jimmy and there's a parade of people that are the most extraordinary, interesting people that sort of walk in and out of the office, and you sit in meetings, and this was one of the strangest when I walked in and someone put a pair of shoes on the table and I thought, excuse me, we make headphones here. What are you doing? And I tried this technology, and we had been so focused on headphones and the experience of listening, like how you hear through your ears. But what's interesting is if you really look at listening is a deliberate act. You can choose to listen to someone or not. Hearing is a sense. And so that is organic and involuntary. And what this inventor, who was a musician, had created is, he said, if I light up your sensory system through this technology, and deliver the energy of music, the same way you experience at a club or at a concert, you feel all the energy and the emotional connection of music. I'm amplifying it. I'm making it feel, it's like rounder, it's bigger, it feels like surround sound. And ironically, so he integrated all this technology into footwear. And I thought, this is the weirdest thing. I put those shoes on and I could not believe it, because I'd always thought about listening to your ears. It's headphones. I've been in headphones forever. And it was really like an incredible moment for me. We all tried it. We were too busy trying to build headphones at that time. So I kept, but I was really intrigued by the technology, and I kept in touch with him. And he came back to me a few years later and showed me what happens when you apply this sensory layer, immersion layer, whatever you want to call it, and how it affects when you add a visual component, right? So now think of movies, gaming, and VR. And I think VR has understood more than other modalities that to be present, the kind of the holy grail of presence is something that, you need to have all of your senses engaged. Otherwise, it's an intellectual exercise. And so we always say that your brain, which is kind of one of the final frontiers, we still don't understand so much about the brain. But we do know that when your brain receives so many sensory inputs, they're all synchronized and time aligned, it literally becomes stitching software. It will take you that last 10% to put you in experience. It's the Matrix, right? It feels real. All my senses are multiple senses are telling me the same thing. So I must be in this experience.
This is so fascinating. I mean, it's probably one of the best stories told because of the fact that the story, from the JBL to the Beats to the inventor to what you're doing today, it just kind of, it's a continuous flow, and it just feels very organic to me. And I think, this notion of the iPad phenomenon back then, and people wanting to be connected to that music, but feeling like they were missing that full range, that true composition of what the music was supposed to mean from an experiential perspective, and feeling like they were just, being short-shifted really, to moving to a full sound headset model. And now we're starting to actually get into all the other senses. And you talked about the fact that it is a intentional component. It's a participatory aspect, versus a passive listening. When we're engaging with the music, there's a response, and that response could be tapping of the foot to movement, a little bit of, dancing in our space, a little spin maybe. So it's very interesting to really incorporate all the various kind of attributes on the body and near the body. So I guess, I think you kind of answered the question around why footwear first, but can you talk about, to really be immersed in this experience, shouldn't we also have haptic feedback in our gloves, our jacket, our clothes, maybe our hats, and really, whether it's the bass that we're feeling, whether it's just that feedback that we're feeling. What's kind of the aspiration of where Drop Labs is going to potentially go?
Well, I will say also about the science. So what becomes really interesting is once you start going down this path and you start to see people's reactions, and then it really starts taking you down, you're going much further down science and R&D than you ever expected, right? And that was something that, you have many mechanoreceptors in your feet, thousands of them, right? And what's so interesting is the more you get into it, you realize that these mechanoreceptors are actually tuned to take vibrational inputs. So, and those vibrational inputs are in the bass range, right? They're anywhere from like 20 to 400 hertz, right? So you're going in sort of the low mids. So you are physiologically wired for these inputs. So there's a reason. And it could have been, and again, it's also this thing of when we were living in caves or even, we were barefoot. I mean, think about the barefoot running movement, right? People want to take environmental information from the ground. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this wiring. So it's become sort of a very, like, as you start to learn, and then you're talking about the sensory system, and then you're talking about neuroscience and like what happens when all those signals are flooding into your brain. So it's been this incredible sort of journey of trying to understand what's happening here. So we understand it so that we can then, I don't want to say manipulate it, but then we can create certain effects for different types of modalities. What's happened in the vision of DropLabs is, it's funny when you go down one path, you think you're building one thing, and then all these other use cases emerge, which always happens with product development. And sometimes you have the happy accidents, or I didn't even realize it could apply here. And for us, it's been really interesting. Like we demo constantly for people and get their feedback. And, this is one example. So someone comes in who's a drummer, and he loves the fact that this is in stereo, and he loves that he can actually hear. I think he said, I knew Keith Moon was a genius, but I didn't even realize this a triplet that existed on Bob O'Reilly. Like, I can't believe it. He's even more of a god than I thought he was before, because he was feeling that. And then he said, I am an EMDR therapist. And EMDR is something that is done a lot with PTSD and trauma. It's a therapy method. It's called eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And it was all done around bilateral stimulation. And the high-level philosophy is that if you have experienced trauma, you actually store it at a cellular level, and you need to process it physically out of your body, as well as going through sort of the intellectual exercise of, talk therapy. So he said, we actually, and EMDR has been interesting because they use a lot of technology, and they're sort of on the forefront of that. And he said, can I remap this product to deliver EMDR? And I said, absolutely. I mean, this is, he's like, because we use these we have people literally in our office using buzzers. And if I can control the intensity and cadence, then I can deliver it through the shoes with or without music during reprocessing. And then you get the fun part of hardware that, well, that's just software, right? So absolutely, right? When people say like, oh, hardware's out of fashion, there's no such thing as hardware anymore. It's all about like, it's a housing that incorporates a really intelligent software system. So we remap it. He now uses it in recovery centers and with patients, has written white papers about it. We're doing another program with Exos, which looked, again, they demoed it and they said, wow, we love this. And I think it's funny too, when you demo for someone, because people, going back to your thing, they have such an emotional connection to music. So the CEO of that company, I think I played Toto, which is one of my secret songs in the car that I like to blast, which also ages me. Because I do the original one, not Weezer, although that is a very good rendition as well. And when I played it for him, he had that emotional connection of a memory of like, he's like, that was the 45 in my parents' basement. Like, this is amazing. But he immediately said, I know what I want to do with this. He's like, I think this can get people into flow state faster because all their sensory systems are lit up. And so I want to have some neuroscientists study this. And I want to see if we can use this for upregulation and downregulation of the central nervous system, pre-workout, post-recovery. And they're one of the elite training facilities in the world. So again, I think for me, my vision, and I'm hoping the future of DropLabs is really a development platform that we can provide to people, and they can show us all the different applications, and then we can determine where the opportunities are. So what's really happened is music is the onboard, it's the inspiration, but it's really about both this human performance piece, and then, which I haven't mentioned, which is of course gaming, right? I mean, gaming is just, it's taking over the world. It's merging, all culture is merging into gaming. My son's first concert was Travis Scott in Fortnite, right? I went to the Police. I went to a physical concert. But for him, it's, why wouldn't I be with an avatar on the front row? hanging out. That's his concert. So gaming is a huge focus of ours, also because it drives the development software platform the fastest.
Yeah, I love the different facets that you cover because of the evidence aspects, right? So, everything from the fact that our bodies respond to vibration because of survival needs. So, going back to the days of Neanderthals and so forth, I mean, or even before that, if there's a large, creature that's potentially going to be nearby, we're going to feel those movements, those weights against the different ground structures. So our body is quite capable, but I don't think up to this point we've really been able to really harness or amplify it. And certainly, I think when we think about our kind of synaptic connections and the things that happens neurologically, there's a lot of interesting things. And when we look at the behaviors of young people, especially, one of the things that they do, aside from the sports and the training aspects, is also the learning and the studying. And many of them tend to listen to music as well. So it's interesting how music, and with the right kind of amplification, could also enhance one's bilateral storage and the actual knowledge demonstration on the projects that they're working on as well. So very, very interesting. I love that it's science-based. And I also like the fact that you guys are, market driven, market fit driven. So allowing for the use cases to come to you and tell you in terms of how creatively these can be placed into different forms and use cases. I do agree that the VR and the gaming is probably going to be one of the largest. I think when you think about the VR, VR doesn't have to be fully gaming, but certainly let's call it fully immersive, is that to be able to replicate one's experience really requires a physical response and physical feedback and that loop cycle. So if we're skydiving, although our feet's not touching the ground, there's going to be sensation and vibrations that we're going to feel, resistance from the air and so forth that we're going to feel as well. So being able to replicate that really enhances and deepens our experiential side in that kind of VR context. And I do think that that's where gaming is going to go. And it's going to be at some point, truly kind of matrix, where it's going to be indistinguishable in terms of the signals that get sent to our brain, whether it's really real or not real, but stimulated.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's really interesting is that because these are your feet, and proprioception, which they call often the sixth sense, which is awareness of your body in space. What your feet do, just physically, literally and metaphorically, is ground you. So especially in VR, where there were a lot of issues with nausea and orientation, being able to understand how your body is in basically a spherical dimension helps with that. Actually, for people, it helps for 10 issues. But so we find there's a lot of that, and say is that I like these sort of entertainment and the kind of call the human sort of merging, or there's a lot of underlying, because if you can of people, if you can be happier, if they're more engaged, if they're more immersed, not looping stuff that we're in the world, and they can it's through games, through music, through movies, and it will help them win, right? So if you can have technology that's going to have a positive impact great. So it's something.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that. I wanted to change the conversation a little bit in terms of, I think one of the skill and capability that you've really refined over the years is really running a lifestyle brand company. So, we've talked about the science and some of the hardware, and how the hardware is just really housing for the software. But there's a lot that's involved, and certainly, there's a lot of technology-based companies that are out there. But, it's clear that DropLabs is first and foremost presenting itself in a lifestyle brand. Tell us about why this strategy is so important, and how it actually makes it so much harder for competitors to easily replicate that success, and how that resonates with the millennials and the Gen Zs.
Things are changing so quickly, right? And how, if you think about when Beats started, there was no social media, was just in its infancy. And so you also find that the way, The feedback loops are incredible. The way you reach customers, it's like, it can be, you can go through a microcomb of like, I can get this person from this place. Like you can really target your audience. And so because this audience lives so much, and both millennials and Gen Z live their entire life online. And what's so interesting for us is that we have a product that really is an experience. And so how are we going to use online to translate that experience? Because a lot of what we were going to do was demos and events, and those are gone. Right. And so it's been an incredible, fascinating challenge of like, how do you translate an emotional, visceral experience into a two-dimensional screen? And how do you identify those people that can really, because the goal for a great brand marketer now is to give people the tools to market for you. Right. Because it's an echo. I mean, it's impossible for you to reach everyone. So what you need to find are the people that are going to become your evangelists, right? And they in turn will market, will sell, and will create. And that's, I think, the big difference is that you're giving people the ability now, and you're asking them, please create for us. Please express how you see this product, service, whatever it is, in your own way, in a way that's authentic to the group that you're in, to the influential sphere that you inhabit. And so smart marketing is about surrendering, right? Giving people like tools and empowering them and finding those right people so that they go out, they become, because you will never be able to amplify a message the way your consumers will.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm sure, the marketing strategy must have changed quite significantly from the days of Beats when it was more, large brands or large celebrity artists and more concert driven to influencer marketing that you're talking about today. I wonder how COVID has really changed that. You started to talk about the fact that you don't have the venues like you used to have, physical venues, but how is COVID, really not just from a marketing, but from a need base that, you got a lot of youth, teenagers that are having issues, let's call it mental health issues with being locked down and having less social connection. How is music a critical survival tool, and how is what DropLabs is providing helping to alleviate some of the stress that the youth are feeling?
I think also just feeling, right? People are the anxiety, the stress, the isolation that people feel right now, it's an all-time high, right? It's like I watch my son who can only interact with people on Zoom, right? That's not, he should be playing sports with his friends. And so, I mean, this sounds great, but it's the body, right? Involving the body and having physical experiences and feeling things emotionally is critical for us right now. It's like, and so haptics on one level is the science of touch, right? And we're certainly not touching as many people as we used to, right? We're not hugging, we're not connecting, we're not shaking hands. And we are social creatures, and we have all those receptors all over our body because they're supposed to be activated. And now we spend our lives in front of screens. And so it is so critical that we can get as much connection as we can. If we can connect you to a piece of music, a piece of content that makes you happy, that's fantastic, right? Because again, if we can light up your sensory system, something that's like you're not using to the degree you're normally using it, you're stuck at home. I think we're in LA, we're about to go into like full lockdown again. So this is, and again, I think the anxiety, the grief, the isolation, the frustration, I mean, it's the mental health tsunami that's coming on the edge of this, we are just seeing the tip of, right? Because we're still in the crisis. So the after effects for this, who knows? And I think that's why I think anything around connection, experience, and putting and really putting things putting experiences back into your body, letting you feel things, it's a human need.
Yep.
So we're using technology to create really a human experience.
So we only have 1 minute left. Our last question is any type of lessons learned that you can share with others?
I told you before the briefing room, I'm like, you don't have that much time. The big thing is, you're going to make mistakes, right? And this is, if anything COVID has taught us, it's resilience, right? So like, no one's going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes, but you can learn from those mistakes. And I think people really need to listen. They need to listen to themselves. They need, every time I listen to, like, you oftentimes know the answers, you just have to listen. And so people need to get quiet. A lot of times the answers are actually there. So I've learned that. I've also learned with COVID, it's, distributed work is not as bad as we thought it was going to be. So there's a lot of it. You will learn your whole life. You will make mistakes your whole life, and it's how you bounce back from those mistakes.
Well, very valuable insights indeed, and absolutely engaging interaction. So thank you for that. Today I've been joined by Susan Paley, who is the CEO of DropLabs. Thank you again.
Thank you. Take care.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.